Welcome back to Neurovascular-Nuggets, everyone. I'm Salma, and today we're diving into something that might just turn your understanding of good sleep on its head. With me, as always, is the brilliant Prof. Osama.
Thanks, Salma. It's great to be here. And you're right, this topic is particularly intriguing because it challenges a very common assumption we all have about sleep. We usually think the more the merrier, especially when it comes to sleep, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, every time I manage to get a solid 9 or 10 hours, I feel like I've won the lottery, like I'm investing in my health. But what we're talking about today, from the Northern Manhattan Study, or NOMAS, seems to suggest otherwise for certain aspects of our health.
Precisely. The NOMA study is quite significant because it's a long-standing investigation into cardiovascular health disparities, particularly among racially and ethnically diverse populations in northern Manhattan. They've always been at the forefront of looking at nuanced factors affecting stroke risk, and this particular paper on sleep duration is a real eye-opener.
So what did they actually look at? Because when we talk about cardiovascular health and sleep, most people think about insufficient sleep, right? Or disturbed sleep. But this is different.
That's exactly it. While many studies focus on the detrimental effects of short sleep, NOMAS zeroed in on the correlation between long sleep duration, specifically 9 hours or more, and subclinical carotid atherosclerosis. Now, for our listeners, subclinical carotid atherosclerosis basically means a buildup of plaque in the carotid arteries, which are the main arteries in your neck that supply blood to your brain. It's a silent killer, a precursor to stroke, often showing no symptoms until it's quite advanced.
So they're looking at something that could potentially lead to a stroke, and they're connecting it to sleeping more than average. That's quite a twist. What kind of population did they study, and how did they control for other factors?
Good question. They looked at a substantial cohort of 1,553 community-dwelling adults. What's crucial here is that NOMAS is known for its rigorous methodology. They controlled for a whole host of socio-demographic and lifestyle variables. We're talking about age, sex, race, ethnicity, education, income, smoking status, alcohol consumption, physical activity, even diet, and pre-existing conditions like hypertension or diabetes. So they tried to isolate the effect of sleep as much as possible.
That's important because you might think, oh, maybe people who sleep a lot are just generally sicker or have other issues, but they tried to filter that out. So, after all that control, what did they find about long sleep?
The results were pretty pronounced. They found a significant association between long sleep duration, which they defined as 9 hours or more, and an increased presence and area of carotid plaque. And this was independent of all those other risk factors we just mentioned. So it wasn't just that people who slept long also smoked more or had diabetes. The long sleep itself seemed to be an independent factor.
Wow, so independent is the key word here. It means it's not just a proxy for something else. This really changes the conversation, doesn't it? Because for years we've been told to aim for 7 to 9 hours, so 9 hours is still within that healthy range for many, but this study is saying the upper end or beyond might be problematic.
Exactly. That's the nuance that makes this so compelling. It's not about being critically sleep deprived, it's about extended duration. And what's also fascinating is what they didn't find. They didn't see a significant correlation between short sleep duration, less than 7 hours, or even daytime sleepiness with these carotid atherosclerosis markers.
That's almost more surprising in some ways, because we hear so much about the dangers of not getting enough sleep for heart health. So this study suggests that when it comes to carotid plaque, oversleeping might be a bigger red flag than undersleeping?
For these specific markers in this population, yes, that seems to be the implication. It's a crucial distinction and it highlights how complex the relationship between sleep and cardiovascular health truly is. It's not a linear more is always better or less is always worse situation across all health outcomes.
So if long sleep is independently linked to this plaque buildup, what are some of the proposed mechanisms? Why might sleeping too much be bad for our arteries?
That's the $1,000,000 question. And the paper does explore some potential pathways, though it emphasizes that causality is still unclear. One leading hypothesis links long sleep duration to metabolic imbalances. We know that long sleepers sometimes exhibit higher rates of obesity, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes, all of which are major risk factors for atherosclerosis.
Right, so it's not just the sleep itself, but maybe what's happening in your body while you're sleeping for longer periods, or maybe the underlying reasons why you're sleeping so long.
Exactly. Another mechanism they point to is inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation is a huge driver of atherosclerosis. Long sleep has been correlated with elevated levels of inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein. If your body is in a constant state of mild inflammation, that's going to damage your blood vessel walls over time, making them more prone to plaque formation.
That makes sense, so it's almost like a slow burn. What about behavioral factors? Because sometimes people sleep a lot because they're depressed or have other lifestyle issues.
You hit on a very important point. The study mentions certain behavioral risk factors as well. People who sleep excessively might be less physically active, for instance, or as you said, they might have underlying health conditions, including mental health issues like depression, that both contribute to long sleep and independently impact cardiovascular health. Even though NOMAS tried to control for many of these, it's a complex web.
So we've got metabolic issues, inflammation, and potentially linked behavioral factors. But the study is clear that causality isn't proven yet, right? We can't say sleeping 9 hours causes plaque.
Absolutely. It's a correlation at this stage, but a very strong and independent one. The beauty of these findings is that they open up new avenues for research. If we can truly understand the why behind this link, it could have significant implications for stroke prevention strategies.
Which leads me to my next question. What are the real-world takeaways for our listeners? Should I be setting an alarm to wake up after 8.5 hours if I naturally sleep longer? How do we interpret this for our daily lives?
That's a very practical question, Salma. And it's tricky because we don't want to cause undue anxiety. First, it's important to remember that this is one study, albeit a well-conducted one, and more research is definitely needed to confirm these findings across different populations and to establish causality.
I iterate, context is everything.
Exactly. However, if you're consistently sleeping 9 hours or more and you find yourself constantly tired, or you have other risk factors for cardiovascular disease, it might be worth having a conversation with your doctor. It's not about cutting down your sleep just for the sake of it, but understanding why you might be sleeping so long. Are you truly getting restorative sleep? Is there an underlying condition like sleep apnea that's making you feel tired even after long hours, prompting you to sleep more?
That's a really good point about the why, because if you're sleeping 9 or 10 hours but waking up feeling groggy, that's a different situation than someone who genuinely feels amazing and energized after a long sleep.
Absolutely. For some, long sleep might be a symptom, not the problem itself. It could indicate poor sleep quality, despite the quantity, or an underlying medical issue that needs addressing. So the takeaway isn't sleep less, it's pay attention to your sleep patterns and how you feel. If you're consistently on the very high end of sleep duration, and especially if you have other stroke risk factors, it's just another piece of the puzzle to discuss with your healthcare provider.
I think that's a really balanced way to look at it. So what does this mean for future interventions? If they can establish causality, could there be therapies or strategies to optimize sleep duration, not just quality?
That's the exciting part. The study explicitly suggests that targeted interventions aimed at optimizing sleep duration, not just improving sleep quality or addressing short sleep, could serve as a novel pathway to mitigate atherosclerotic burden. Imagine if, once we understand the mechanisms better, we could develop specific recommendations or even therapies for individuals who are consistently oversleeping and showing signs of increased plaque.
That's fascinating. It really highlights how interconnected everything is in our bodies and how something as seemingly innocuous as sleeping too much could have such profound implications. It's a wake-up call, no pun intended, to think holistically about our health.
Indeed, and it underscores the importance of studies like NOMAS that look beyond the obvious. We've spent so much time on the dangers of sleep deprivation, and rightly so, but this opens up a new frontier in understanding the sweet spot for sleep duration, especially when it comes to specific outcomes like carotid atherosclerosis and stroke risk.
So to recap for our listeners, the Northern Manhattan study found a significant and independent link between long sleep, defined as 9 hours or more, and increased carotid plaque. This is a precursor to stroke. Short sleep didn't show the same association. And while the why is still being investigated, potential mechanisms include metabolic imbalances, inflammation, and behavioral factors.
Perfect summary, Salma. And remember, if you're regularly clocking in 9 or more hours of sleep, and especially if you're concerned about your cardiovascular health, it's a good conversation starter with your doctor. They can help evaluate if there's an underlying reason for your extended sleep or if it's something to monitor more closely.
Excellent advice, Prof. It really makes you think twice about hitting that snooze button for the third time, doesn't it? Thank you so much for breaking down this really thought-provoking research for us.
My pleasure, Salma. Always great to discuss these nuggets of neurovascular knowledge with you.
And thank you all for tuning into Neurovascular Nuggets. We'll be back soon with more insights to keep you informed about your brain and vascular health. Until next time, stay curious and stay healthy.